All right, so welcome back. Next up, we're going to take a look at our conversation is grounded in public-private partnerships and the green economy. We're going to take a look both at the high-level findings as it relates to partnerships and the green economy, but also looking at the global context. We'll hear from senior brand scientist Aimee Curtright, as well as look at case study examples right here in Pittsburgh between Duquesne Light, thank you for being here, Jess, and the work that's happening in partnership with the Congress of Neighboring Communities, also known as Connect, which is led by Lydia Morin. And she's going to speak on the climate action plan that was released a couple years ago and is being implemented by municipal leaders across our region, like Councilman Dan Davis from West Mifflin Borough. With that, I'd like to welcome our moderator, the one and only Marita Garrett, former mayor of Wilkinsburg and founder of Civically. Marita is a public service and civic duty leader. It's in her DNA. She was born into a family that firmly believes in exercising their civic duties and spirit of volunteerism. Her drive and commitment to serving under-resourced communities is palpable. And so honored to have you here leading this conversation. Take it away, Marita.
Thank you so much, Betty. Thank you all for joining and participating in these timely discussions that are being held today. So again, I'm honored to be here with you all and come home in a way of many things. So I'm a Pitt alum, held Pitt, teach at Pitt. If anyone notices the theme, I feel like once you're in the Pitt system, they kind of keep the principles in you. But then also being reconnected with Lydia Morin, who I had the pleasure of being chair of Connect many moons ago. And so, especially with the release of the climate action plan. So it's always great to see you, Lydia, great to see you, Councilman Davis, and also looking forward to hear just where we are at as it relates to the green economy, both globally and specifically the lessons that we can learn right here in the Pittsburgh region, which I know both Jess and Aimee will have a lot to say on. So we're just going to hop right on in, and I'll get us going with the conversation with our panelists for about 25-30 minutes so we can hear fully from each of you and then move on to Q&A. So first for Aimee, can you help us settle into this conversation on public-private partnerships and the green economy with some fundamentals? So for example, what would you say is the main focus of the green economy?
So that's a great question. And I think green means different things to different people, but usually green is synonymous with sustainable. I think even though we're talking about sustainability all day, it's worth thinking about the two components of sustainability. One is that we are able to meet the needs of people today, and the second piece is not sacrificing the needs of people tomorrow. And I think as a society, globally and nationally and regionally, we are arguably not meeting either of those requirements for sustainability, either the needs of people today or the people tomorrow. And so I think it's really important to ground those fundamentals. But directly to your question, I think the core of green really is around climate change. And so which is what we're all talking about today. So there are opportunities, in terms of used earlier, we're going to dig into them a little bit more, but mitigation, which is reducing the damage that we're doing to the climate, and ideally reversing some of the damage we talked about earlier, and then adaptation, which is basically getting ourselves ready for the changes that are already happening around us. So that, I think that really is kind of the defining area. A lot of other important issues, biodiversity, water resources, etc., but they all kind of are connected with the changing climate.
Especially about that part that green means different things to different people, but having that tie and that basis of it is about sustainability. Help someone that's me who may not always be necessarily in these climate action spaces. So thank you for breaking that down. And so as a senior scientist with RAND, what trends or challenges are you seeing as it relates to both the public-private partnerships in the space that address climate broadly and locally?
Yeah, so I think on balance, the trend that I'm seeing, I'm pretty optimistic about them. We've talked a lot about Josh mentioned the culture of no and a lot of resistance to change, but I think that if you look at recent polls of individuals around the globe and in this country, you will find that there is an increasing awareness of sustainability being something we should be focusing on. I think the latest poll I've read is that 89% of people globally think sustainability should be a priority. And interestingly, I think there's also a broader acceptance of the fact that we need to do something about it. And what's interesting is there's a gap between what people individually think about the need to do something and what they think others think about it. So, more than 60% of people in that same poll said they would take 1% of their income every month and put it towards the change, the mitigating action of climate change. But they thought that only 40% of the people globally would be willing to do that. So there is this gap, and I think we can bridge that gap by talking about climate change. This conversation we're having today, it just needs to be something we talk about all the time in connection with everything else. And then I think the third change, the trend that I'm really optimistic about, is governments are figuring out ways to take action despite political grenades being lobbed at each other, right? So the federal government right now, it's not sexy, it's not flashy, but these infrastructure bills are hugely important for climate change adaptation mitigation. I don't think we cannot overstate how important those bills would be. So the fact that despite all the political rancor, despite lots of polarization, we have the largest climate action happening in the country today. Makes me optimistic.
I love that positivity.
Trying to be
positive. Okay. So now, Lydia, for folks who are not familiar with Connect, please share a high-level overview of the important work that you are leading with local governments, and then walk us through Connect's climate action plan and really what's at the heart of it.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Does anyone know how many governments we have now?
Too many. Too many.
Do you raise your hand if you think we have more than 50 governments? Raise your hand if you think we have more than 100 governments. Keep your hands up. We have 130 separate municipalities in Alameda County, and each one is entirely in charge of what happens in its boundaries. Connect is a way of making some of those boundaries mean less of a barrier to innovation. So the Congress of Neighboring Communities started out as the city of Pittsburgh and 35 direct neighbors who had no relationships with each other, but had all the same problems. What does it look like when 130 people try to solve a problem with no resources? It's 130 problems, right? So what we hope to do is to say, look, you all have the same problem, but there's 130 of you who could solve it. Really, we're really concentrating on members. So what's really interesting about how it was formed, it was formed as an EU. So the EU was forming at the time that our faculty member, Dr. David Miller, who is passed now, but was a dean over at ISBA and a 20-year government manager. And he came to our region and said, why is this so hard? And why do we not know each other? And whoa, why don't we kind of seem to not like each other? You can't be on a team if you don't know your teammates, if you don't at least respect your teammates. And there is a similar perception where all the other municipalities thought the city hated them and thought lesser of them. And then the opposite way, the city's like, none of those people like us, they don't want to talk to us. And so that's not a way to solve regional problems, right? And so he brought them all together and he said, let's see what you guys have in common. And it turned out all the governments need to plow their street, make their streets safe. They'd like to have parks, they'd like to have safe roads without a bunch of potholes. And a lot of times their whole budget is to make sure the roads are paved. I think a bulk of most of our municipal budgets. And so over the last several decades, we have disinvested in government innovation and government relationship building. That completely went away starting in the 80s at Reagan and has continued to go away. But without that, we don't get to the part where we share ideas and have the resources combined to do innovation. And so Connect is this really awesome model where we bring together, basically I call them a pack of unicorns, because these are elected officials. So for the record, how much do you think an elected official makes? Yeah, right? No. So Amy's at 50,000. That's insane. Thank you for that lovely guess. No. In our region, we have over 130 people who are mayor, and most of them make on average $200 a month to perform that service. They have full-time jobs. They have full-time families, lives, and they already have, and these council meetings, I don't know if you've ever, has anyone ever been to a council meeting? Great. So they're not short, they don't take no preparation, and you have to do a lot together. And sometimes it's, you have to sit on that council with the guy you grew up across the street and have kind of hated since high school. And then you're supposed to get together and do something different and scary and new, which is really hard, and that's just a human thing. So I guess the way that Connect works is that we bring people together who are going to do the thing. And those are the unicorns. These are the elected officials who are on top of volunteering to basically be an elected official on their community, serving on multiple committees. There's, as a council person, you have to serve on at least 1 or 2 extra committees on top of the council. Maybe it's Parks and Rec, maybe it's planning, maybe it's human resources. But you're not having 1 meeting a week on that. And then on top of that, they volunteer their time and brain power to come to Connect and say, we're not going to solve this alone, but with all my neighbors, I'm going to be able to. And so that's what Connect has been doing for about 15 years now. We're really growing into a powerful place. And I'm really excited about the climate action plan. It's huge. But I'm not talking about that yet. I'm just talking about Connect.
You are, but great segue. It's almost like you were prepared for this. How were you able to rally support from all these unicorns or policy makers to produce that unified climate action plan? And also, what moved the needle? But also, what moved the needle for elected officials to get behind this?
Well, I think it was so interesting what Amy was just saying about the perception of how many people want to save the planet. I think that's fascinating because I think that just opened up a whole light bulb in my head. Because I started the climate action plan very early, but I knew it had to be done. And so we had a state government saying, all of our communities should have a climate action plan. The city of Pittsburgh has had one for about 12 years now. Other regions in the country have had climate action plans for like 20 years. Across the state, the Delaware, kind of their MPO, kind of their SPC, they've had a climate action plan. They've been doing metro soccer projects together as a huge region for over a decade. So I don't think it's like that innovative to have a climate action plan, but what was innovative was to try to do it for more than one government. Does everybody know what a climate action plan is? Okay, so I'm going to give a quick definition of a climate action plan. It is first of all, it's a greenhouse gas inventory. So how do you know where you are now? What do we know about what is in the air? What do we know about what are, our flooding, our water quality, all these different things, and what's contributing to it? And what that takes is talking to your gas company, your water company, all these different vendors, right? Who are all already sick of having to talk to 130 vendors, and then give them more information. And so what we did was we worked with the Department of Environmental Protection, Pennsylvania, to help them grow an internship program. They assign interns to municipalities to do this incredibly data-heavy, time-consuming task of creating greenhouse gas inventory. So you can know where you are, so you can start to figure out where your different sectors are that will make the most impact with reduction of greenhouse gases. And I think you guys have been learning about that, so we'll get into that nitty-gritty. But the hard part is most of our municipalities have a manager, right? One manager, maybe a staff person, and that staff person's job is to make sure taxes get paid, or accounts receivable, or sometimes, I don't know, at least 4 of our members still have a typewriter that's doing in and out stuff, right? So it takes a long time. There's not a lot of use of AI yet to make things faster so that you can think about the impending doom of a planet. And so what we are doing at Connect is making that easier for all the governments to understand where they are now and see where they can have the highest impact. And we did greenhouse gas inventories for all 42 of our members. We worked with the city to get theirs. And then, and the whole time, I gotta say, the county wasn't ready. The SPC wasn't ready, but we knew it was coming, and we knew that this would be a really good model for when we wanted to get into major regional planning. And so we did. So I think when you said green economy, the other word word for green is money, right? This is how we save from having to mitigate landslides that cost one, we'll just bankrupt the community. This is how we save before, our rivers completely flood over and there's like all these little, new out-of-state infrastructure that get ruined, right? So I think the way that we sold it to people first and foremost was that sustainability has more than one meaning. It's not just about, all of us green hippies. It's also about, we want to be fiscally responsible humans with the limited resources we have in this society that we live in. So I think that was how we sold it to a lot of people. But it is really interesting to hear that perception thing, because I'm always like, oh, don't say climate to them. Don't say climate, that's going to freak everybody out. And I'm always like, don't say this. These are like words that media has co-opted to turn it into different kinds of dog whistles or different types of very extreme politics. And that's the other thing I love about Connect is I literally have no idea what political affiliation any of our members have. Not even a thought. It's just good ideas with good people, and it's really, that's how the actually thing happened.
And as a unicorn of Connect, I could definitely testify to that, because being in rooms where you have Wilkinsburg, which is considered economically distressed, being in the same spaces as Mount Lebanon, but recognizing we also face the same challenges as well too. So it's just a wonderful space to be in. So please, you all learn more about that. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Councilman Davis. So you are one of those unicorns / municipal leaders who have adopted the climate action plan. So can you tell us about what moved you to take this action up for your municipality of West Mifflin?
Well, Lydia, she's hard to follow. Okay, she sets the stage, she sets the bar very high for all of us. Because actually, I'm on the board of Connect too. She's got me engaged so much that I know a board member would Connect. She's helped us in so many ways to understand that we're just not combined with boundaries, as she says. We have regional issues that if we pull our resources together, we can do better things. And one of the things we're doing right now, and I sidetracked where I've been thinking about, is solar. We're going to do some solar projects, and I think there are 7, 8, or 9 communities that we plan to do different solars, but through Connect, they are in charge of doing this research, getting the power companies together for us, so we can do this project as one. So all us 8 communities didn't have to go out for bids on this, get separate entities to put on it. But Connect has helped us with this. But I want to switch now to equitable sustainability. It goes to Wilkinsburg, it goes to us in Mon Valley. We've been sort of the ones, the foster challenge in Allegheny County. That we have our good times when steel mills were running. Our population growth was good till the 70s, but then we lost all our people. We've been down on population decrease, and we needed help. And if we think the same thing, we can make changes. So this climate action and green sustainability, that's something I jumped on. We can't be doing the same thing over and over. And Jess has helped us because Jess, we became the first municipality in Allegheny County to have a charging station that was both on our municipal property and it was open to the public. So the public can charge us. And because of that, we've got a police vehicle, an F-150 EV, and we have a hybrid police vehicle. Our 2 code enforcement cars are EVs. So when we were buying vehicles, we said, hey, there are grants out there, there's money out there, let's test it out and see what we can do. Again, Duquesne Light said, hey, why don't you look at your lighting? Why don't you think about switching over to LED? Well, we did. The cost investment was returned that same year for us by switching over the lights. And we just didn't do it to our municipal building, we did it to our public works and to our sewer authority. So we're thinking about that. We're one of the few municipalities that does garbage collection still. And that's very good because a lot of ones, if you've heard about it, their fees went up quite a bit this year with waste management. But we've been on the forefront of keeping that and doing resources with that, recycling, mulching, how do we better do that? And through Allegheny County, through Clerical Works, because of their fine, we got a garbage truck, electrical garbage truck will come into effect with our fleet next year. So we're looking at any aspects we can. We have a purple air monitor that I'm glad that I won because I came to Connect. But it's so interesting to see what our climate levels are. A week and a half ago, we had temperature inversions that the Clerical Works had some, I think it's benzene releases. that if you looked at the purple air monitors in our area, you would have seen that they were all up, that we had an issue. People that didn't know that there was purple air monitors were calling the gas company thinking there were gas leaks. But if you looked at purple air, you would have seen the whole surrounding area was having an issue. So taking on climate action issues at a local level, you got to have someone like me on council, and you have to have a borough manager think outside the box, to look at the money that's available and move on.
Councilman Davis, because that's really intriguing to hear that you are the first. So how do you see that, preparation for that with the green economy positively impacting West Mifflin? So whether that's through jobs, whether that's through other opportunities, how do you see that positively affecting your municipality?
Well, what I really want to see is impacting Clairton, Braddock, McKeesport, Clairton. By our example, they're seeing that it can be done. We're not economically, fulfilling with all our needs that we need to do. But they can see what we're doing, and we're telling them how to get grant money. Use Connect, use Pittsburgh Sustainability, use Southwest Pennsylvania Commission. There are venues out there to get money and grants right now. As I told someone at our table, it's an election year. We're going to have so much money in Pennsylvania. We need to go after as much grants as we can. Take advantage of it. If you're going to get an electrical vehicle for almost free, you only have to pay 10%. Take it, embrace it, see what we can do here to make the changes. I want people to live a better life, bring the jobs back to the area that we had, and same thing with Wilkinsburg. We can make a change.
We're going to. So yes, in the charge. Yes, thank you. Oh, those are funds. Okay. All right. So now charging 2 jets at Duquesne Light. What do you see as your specific role or responsibility as an industry leader to take action on climate? And what steps are you taking as it relates to mitigation?
Well, thank you, Marita. And I just want to say it's always very inspiring to hear what our local municipalities are doing, because they really are, I feel like, taking the leadership role in this space. And so I think the resources that Connect is able to bring to the table to help make those visions a reality is incredibly inspiring. So just want to thank you for that. So I do work for Duquesne Light. I don't assume everyone's local, but if you're not, Duquesne Light Company is our electric utility here in Allegheny County, for most of Allegheny County and most of Beaver County. So that accounts for about 600,000 customers that we provide that we provide power to. One of the things that brought me to Duquesne Light, I've been here for about 2 years, but was really their vision for a clean energy future for all. And that equity piece is something that was really important to me, and why I wanted to come to Duquesne Light. I work at a group of individuals, there's 6 of us, we're part of the transportation electrification team. So Duquesne Light has made it a priority to think about how we can help commercial customers, municipalities transition to electric fleets, or provide charging for the community, for workplace charging, for residents. When we think about charging in apartment complexes and places where we wouldn't have access to off-street parking, it becomes really important to figure out how to create, honestly, public-private partnerships with the utility to help provide that infrastructure. When we think about climate change, we know that 1/4 of our greenhouse gas emissions are related to transportation. So electrifying that sector can be a really important way to address climate change. A key part of that is thinking about individual single occupancy vehicles, but it's also thinking about transit. We work with the PRT to help electrify their bus fleet. We're also working with a couple different school districts right now to help electrify school buses and provide that electrical, infrastructure needed to help make that happen. There's a couple things that we do as part of the transportation electrification team. A big part of it is education and outreach. I'm here with Matt today, Matt McDonald, who leads us. We also provide a lot of technical assistance, and that's something that we can help, even thinking about how to navigate all of this federal and state funding. We were talking about that at lunch today. There's a huge amount of funding out there right now, but navigating how to actually apply for it can be incredibly challenging for municipalities. It can be challenging for nonprofits, businesses, so we're able to help provide that kind of technical assistance to bring that money to our region. We want that money to come here. And another program that I actually help manage is our community and fleet charging program. So we are in our third year of the program, and what we can do is help fund the infrastructure from the transformer all the way up to the charging station. So West Mifflin was our first project, which we were very proud of. So we were able to reduce that overall project cost probably more than half by covering all of that infrastructure costs. It's a public, I would call it a public-private partnership because we actually own that infrastructure for 10 years in partnership with the borough, who owns the charging stations and agrees to own and operate them for 10 years. So it's a creative way that the private sector can help offset costs for municipalities and commercial customers. Another program that we're excited to talk about is our Electrify Allegheny program, which we're partnering with Connect on, as well as PRC, Pittsburgh Region Clean Cities. And it's a way that we can help provide that technical assistance and kind of looking at a community to figure out how you can even begin providing charging for your community, and also looking at fleets the same way that West Mifflin did. So you can actually do an analysis of a customer's fleet to decide, or help you decide, what vehicles to transition to electric, when, and if it doesn't make sense for a particular vehicle, we'll tell you that. We'll say, hey, there isn't a model that could easily fit the needs of this vehicle. It may not make sense to switch to electric. So there's a lot of services that we provide. We're really excited about Electrify Allegheny, and we think it'll be a great way to help support municipalities and nonprofits in our region.
And Jess, you're not a stranger to all the different municipalities, because prior to joining Duquesne Light, you used to work for a former county executive. So now, with that said, what are some of the fundamental pieces that must be in place, whether from policymakers or industry leaders, to support meaningful and impactful change in the public-private partnerships within the green economy?
Yeah, I think when I worked for the county, we talked a lot to municipalities and listened to their needs, and I feel like the things that we heard the most were around, technical assistance and support. Municipalities are dealing with a million issues and don't have the resources that they need. And so how can the private sector help provide that technical assistance and support, help really manage a project from beginning to end for a municipality? I think that was an important need that I think Duquesne Light is trying to help with this, our community and fleet charging program. But I also think it's funding, and I think it's resources. And so I think that's the biggest thing that, as far as the private sector can do, is try to come up with these creative solutions, thinking about ways that we can provide financial support to make projects happen for our community.
And so now we've heard a lot about litigation, which is, and Amy, you touched on that, which is centered on preventing or reducing the emission of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere to make the impacts of climate change less severe. Now let's get into adaptation, which for anyone not familiar with the term in the climate context, adaptation is the process of adjusting to an actual or expected environmental change and its effects in a way that seeks to moderate harm or exploit beneficial opportunities. So briefly, the 5th National Climate Assessment Report states that adaptation activities are occurring across the United States, but have been small in scale, incremental in approach, and lacking insufficient investment. Transformative approaches will be necessary to adequately address current and future risks. To improve capacity and promote an equitable future, adaptation activities must address the uneven distribution of climate harms and incorporate collaboration with local communities. So this question is for everyone, but Amy, I saw your head nod, so Could you get us started on the importance of adaptation and insights that you have from your work, whether in other parts of the world or right here in Alameda County?
Thanks. Yeah. So when I started thinking about climate change 30 plus years ago, I didn't want to talk about adaptation. So I was all about mitigation and stop this from happening. Here we are. We're still talking about mitigation. So we have to walk and chew gum at the same time, unfortunately. We have to start preparing for this. And I think, to your point, these are, we need to do a lot more in this space for adaptation because it's something that's hot. So we're already feeling climate change impacts. So I think that there's a sweet spot where we can focus on projects that help us both with mitigation and adaptation. So, for example, building energy efficiency is going to become more and more important as predictable weather, hot, cold. We talked about earlier on energy poverty and energy burden, the cost that a disproportionate number of our folks in this area are spending on their energy money. And so, building energy efficiency is a great example of that. Building more connected communities is another great example of how you can support mitigation and adaptation. More connected communities are more resilient, they are more ready to help each other when that climate crisis comes. So I think it's really important to weave those two things together. I will say that what's interesting about the Pittsburgh region, and this gets back to the earlier session about climate refugees, what's interesting about the Pittsburgh region is we are, make no mistake, we have problems. Flashier rain, our gray water infrastructure is not up to the challenge. We've got problems, we're going to have mudslides, et cetera, and so forth. But we are pretty lucky here. We're not going under the ocean. We're not going to run out of water. And I would not be surprised if we're not talking in years about helping climate refugees find a place here to live. And I think we need to prepare for that, and we need to do it thoughtfully. Let's just plan on it because it's going to be something we need to do. We need to do it in a way that doesn't leave people behind that are already here in this region, but that brings people in. You know, we've got a problem with workforce here. We don't have enough people to do the jobs that need to be done in the green economy or anyplace else. And so I think we should start to plan on that. And I think it's a real opportunity for us to be leaders in this space. Yeah, sure.
And
here.
Well, in regards to that, it's really transportation outside of the city that we're having an issue with. Is getting people from point A to point B. You know, I know in Mon Valley, we have service, but not enough service to get us to our jobs, to get us to where we do, because the frequency's not there. You know, I look back and I see pictures of the trolleys. That was a great system. Why we got rid of it, I don't know. But that's what we're missing in the South Hills. And probably in the North Hills is better transit of how do we get people to their work. And so we're not having all the vehicles on the road. You know, I know they're putting the rapid bus line from here down to Pittsburgh, but it's outside the city that we need to do it so we can reduce our carbon footprint.
Thank you, Councilman, because I was feeling that, because even with Wilkinsburg, if you get a little bit off the Penn Avenue, then access changes that quick to the frequency of PRT. If you're not directly at the Wilkinsburg station, so access is so key. So, yeah.
One thing, West Mifflin doesn't have a main street. You know, we're one of the unique boroughs that doesn't. We have county roads, city roads, PennDOT roads, and now we have a turnpike coming in. I don't have a main street, so transportation is key.
When I was thinking, I feel like there's a lot of ways to answer this question or approach this question. I was thinking about it from a utility perspective and what we can do in relationship to adaptation. So we're a 100-year-old company, and like a lot of Pittsburgh and our region throughout the county, you know, we have aging infrastructure. You know, one thing that as a utility that we're committed to is making our grid more resilient. And even as we're thinking about electrification and electric transportation, we know we need a strong, resilient grid to handle all of that electrical needs. So one of the things I wanted to bring up is that Duquesne Light was recently awarded a grid grant, which is almost $20 million federal DOE money coming in to help with our infrastructure, and then we're matching that with another $20 million. So that's over the course of the next 5 years where we are really using a data-driven approach to figure out where within our grid we need to strengthen and make it more resilient. Because when we think about things like even storms, our infrastructure is susceptible to that. We want to reduce the amount of outages, and we want to be able to support the growth that we know is coming.
Thank you. So now, lastly, looking ahead, we know that partnerships and new economies are vital to our success and our future. This is true for all municipalities, businesses, no matter what size you are. Now, when you look at the work that you are part of now, or where you hope to be, whether as a policymaker, scientist, business, or nonprofit leader, what is your North Star? Like, what are you hoping for, and what is it going to take to get there? And if we could briefly do this, the flash one, we'll start with Jess.
Oh, okay. From I think about this very personal, right? It's not just professional, kind of North Star. So when I think about it, I do think about wanting for everyone to have an opportunity to breathe clean air, right? That seems like a simple thing, but it's not a simple thing. When I think about what we need to make that happen, I do think, having clean energy and using electrifying, whether it's transit, whether it's our homes, our businesses, our communities, is a way that can help get us to that North Star.
Mine is certainly in regionalization is what I really want to see, because again, we see our communities or municipalities here in Allegheny County, but working, just what we're doing right now is very important. Connect us in the last 10 years tremendously. Working with the utilities to work, that's what we need. And I think with our new administration, Sarah Morel, Mayor Gainey, with Summerlee, I look at Veteran, look where they're at, what they're trying to do. I mean, again, Summerlee and Veteran, Smithville and Brad, they have to understand the mind needs a little bit more. But we're understanding what we need. We need to think outside the box.
Yeah, I agree with that. No, that's great. So I think a lot about the people who are doing this work. So much of what I do is bringing those people together. And I see sick and tired people. And so I think my North Star, and we are, you're sick and tired and you're depressed because we're looking at the end of the university. It's like a lot. So I think my North Star is making sure that we have a lot of opportunities to find our own community and find our common community. Common community is where empathy comes from. It's where the ego can step aside for a new idea. So I would just say common community is probably my North Star.
I feel like we're a little bit.
Very cool. It's a
So I think that, carrying on what we said, I think focusing on opportunity and the silver lining behind these issues is really important, and making sure you're not getting into the very understandable anger that you're feeling about factories. So I think it's going to be really important for us to not other anybody. I don't think she's in this room. I don't know what else to say. I do want to think about her. This morning, we were talking about our refugees. There was a reference to protesting DOD because they use a lot of energy. And she's exactly right. The Air Force burns a lot of liquid fuel. But there are human beings that work for DOD. They love their children too. They're just doing their job. And DOD has a goal of all the facilities having 100% carbon-free electricity by 2030. So yes, be angry, but also to quote the laureate this morning, which I thought that was an amazing poem. But they said, "I want to scream, but only where it matters." And I'm taking that on time. Start scream where it matters and scream in productive ways. I love that.
Marching orders.
Yeah, seriously. Scream where it matters, yet be productive. So thank you.
Well,
So now we will open it up for Q&A. We have about
Sounds right. Can I grab one mic? So yeah, we'll open up to Q&A again. So just raise your hand, and I'll first read the Q&A.
So I have a question about electric vehicle charging. Jessica, I think you mentioned this briefly, but I'm interested to hear more about how we're solving the problem of charging for people who don't have parking. In my neighborhood, there's like an extension cord going across the sidewalk, which is an ideal. Like, how do we practice that?
It is a big undergrad. And I think there's a lot of different approaches, right? And it needs to kind of be an all of the above approach. When we're working with municipalities, we're trying to identify public parking lots. We're trying to look at right-of-way solutions where the municipality, perhaps, or parking authorities can own and operate charging stations within property that they have right-of-way over, whether it's a parking lot or right-of-way. We also are trying to, we know people want to charge near where they live, but we also know that people want to charge where they're working and where they're shopping and doing their daily errands, right? So it really needs to be an all of the above approach. We work with workplace charging, so we have Phipps who's in the room, like I mentioned, we work with a workplace charging project with them. So we have a number of customers where if we provide easy, accessible charging where people work, that opens up the possibility for purchasing an electric vehicle and having accessibility to charging. So it is a huge undergrad, and I think we know, and Matt can correct me if I'm wrong, right now we have about 11,000 electric vehicles registered in our Duquesne Light territories, Allegheny and Beaver County. We expect by 2030 that number to reach about 80,000 vehicles registered. So it's huge growth. I believe we have about 700 level 2 chargers that are open to the public right now that anyone can access. But by 2030, it will be about 4,500. So that's a huge amount of charging infrastructure that we're talking about. And so we need all of the solutions in order to make this a reality for people.
Given the impacts of stronger storms on all of our communities moving forward, I'm very interested in how we are going to adapt our electrical system grid that is in the air, blowing over poles, knocking down lines. When are we not going to have all these lines hanging out in the air? What's the next plan? For underground? What's the infrastructure going to look like moving forward?
Sure. So I can take a little bit to that. I'm not in the distribution planning or distribution engineering world, but I do know that it is a very costly endeavor to put electrical lines underground. I know we talked to a number of municipalities about that. I don't know if West Mifflin has looked into that, but the costs are astronomical. And so we do have a grid here that is predominantly overhead, unless you're in the downtown areas or some suburban communities that have been able to kind of develop underground infrastructure as they're building their community. So it's really comes down to cost, right? We want to also keep infrastructure or our rates at an affordable rate. When we start thinking about varying utilities, the cost to do that makes it such a cost prohibitive.
And there are no mandates for that, no public conversation as to how we want the grid to look.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the country goes, we do have a pretty reliable grid, but of course we want to keep that evolving and growing. One idea I'm having now, this is something that we haven't talked a lot about, but Connect started a software called Coordinate PA, and this is going to be an opportunity to use that constantly when we start talking about that. It's also broadband rolling out right now. We're getting into roads, we're putting things on the ground. So that question really starts to really the conversation around, I'll tell you what Coordinate PA is. Have you guys gone to a road that seems like it's always under construction? And as a taxpayer and a ratepayer, you pay for that paving over and over again. So Connect hated that too. And they wanted to create, in our state, you only have to tell the municipality you're going to dig 3 days in advance. That's the only mandate. And so there's no room to coordinate that stuff. And so our members are like, let's make some proprietary software so that we won't pave the road the year before the gas company knows you're going to do scheduled maintenance on it. And so we know that a lot of these big companies are going to have scheduled maintenances in a lot of places. So it would be a really interesting thing to look at. I love that idea from the audience around when these roads are opening up anyway, so I have an opportunity to get in there and put some stuff on the ground.
That's the stuff that you're underground already, and you guys coordinate that.
Yeah. So Coordinate PA, what's interesting is our governments wanted to do it, and then as soon as the software was made by PA1 call, they did it across the state. Every utility used it immediately because why wouldn't you want to save money? So I think it's actually an opportunity here. I love that question. This is why I love Connect. I love ideas.
It's great to hear what you've accomplished with the private-public cooperation and partnership in Allegheny County. Some of us are here from Butler County and points north. Is Connect operating outside of Allegheny, or are there other organizations that can do what you have done? Because we all have the same problem with multiple municipalities and the lack of cooperation between them.
Well, listen, I'll come and talk to anyone, so carefully invited. But I will point you in the direction of, so one of our models was providing technical assistance to governments, and the model itself is a lot about the meetings and convening and getting those relationships built over time. But in this moment in history, we don't necessarily all have time for that. So the Southwest PA Municipal Project Hub is basically a major way to expand what Connect is doing, rapidly deploying technical assistance to governments to get that money. Honestly, get that money is not a theme right here. So, get that money? So it's brand new. Actually, you can go on the website right now, southwestpahub.org, and you can sign up to start getting their communications. And they are working in the SPC kind of footprint. So they are putting together municipal project partners across sectors, mainly focused on the green sustainability we talked about earlier. So I'm happy to come out to Butler. I've got the Beaver, we've got Westmoreland County, really talking about the model. But Southwest PA has a bunch of money to help you with much money right now. Yes, I have.
And we have time for one last question over here.
Hi, thank you so much for the conversation so far. So a theme ongoing throughout the day for a lot of events like this is to think globally and act locally, right? And obviously, like the interests of the greater planet at stake here. I guess I'm interested in the conversation around the fact that a lot of the minerals that we need to electrify our fleets and transportation, lithium, cobalt, copper, they're coming from the global south. There's this new scramble for Africa. You see where I'm going, right? Where millions of people are working to mine these. So we're talking about, getting businesses to invest, Microsoft, et cetera. What does the conversation look like when it comes to thinking globally in a way that is not putting these communities in the global south at risk, which, for furthering conflict in the south, that means more emissions. So there is this contradiction, and I think we can't not afford to address either. including when we talk about DOD going green, right? So I'm very interested to hear, what those conversations also.
So, I guess the short answer is there are a lot of conversations happening about this right now, from local human rights issues to national security issues. I would say there's a really interesting paper that came out, where they kind of looked at the impact of mining coal versus mining cobalt, right? So we're talking about changing the scale by orders of magnitude, but we're still talking about extracting a lot of materials, and as you said, in places where we've historically engaged colonialistically. And so we've got to really be careful about that. I think that there are some provisions in some of the federal infrastructure money that require that we think about that and we obtain materials domestically. But there's nothing we do with scale that doesn't have an impact. I mean, the real answer here is circular economy, efficiency. Like we can't mine our way out of this problem. We have to do less. Do more with less. We have to do less with more. But it's a real issue, and they're actually love to chat with about it because it's a really important problem, and I think it's just now coming to the fore. We're just realizing the magnitude of the resources we're going to need to pull out of the ground to make clean energy happen.
Just add one thing. I don't know if you're aware of Arch 2, hydrogen hubs that we're looking here in West Virginia, Ohio, and Pennsylvania right now. It's a 10-year program of how we're going to use hydrogen as another resource besides electricity. And there's one problem if it's I guess a CO2 byproduct of how they do that maybe. But hydrogen is another area of opportunity here in the tri-state area that we're going to start looking at as an energy source too. So besides electricity, there's hydrogen out there too. So there's a 10-year program that's really in our backyard that is going to create jobs and opportunities that do research on it. I mean, you could just I know that.
No, hydrogen is a really interesting opportunity, and if you want to get curious about technology, just say with hydrogen. But I mean, it's a lot of technology, but because hydrogen does come from natural gas, it does create CO2, it has to be coupled with carbon capture and storage. And reference what I just said, you can't do anything at scale without an impact. So we have to think about that. It's not as sexy like hashtag insulator pillars. It's really the way it can be.
And with that said, let's continue to have these conversations backed by impact. So I want to thank you all again, our esteemed dynamic panel, for showing us specific actionable ways that private and public sectors can come together to address the climate and the impacts of the green economy. So let's give them another round of applause.